Today on Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on a big matchup coming up here in the SEC in Week 4 of this 2021 season, and it's going to be between the Tennessee Volunteers and the Florida Gators. Big matchup coming up here in Gainesville this weekend. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today, starting out with your team trends. Last week for both these teams, Tennessee beat Tennessee Tech 56-0. Obviously, that should have been the expected outcome. Tennessee Tech is already an 0-3 team. So going into that matchup, Tennessee was definitely expected to blow them out, which they did, fortunately. But Tennessee is 2-1 heading into this matchup, 1-game winning streak. And overall, Tennessee, this is a team that shouldn't be slept on. Of course, Tennessee has had a couple of offensive question marks, and the quarterback situation in particular is a big area of question for this team right now. But Tennessee is, they lost to Pittsburgh a couple of weeks ago, but Tennessee's played pretty well otherwise this season so far. As for Florida, they lost to Alabama last week by 29-31. That game honestly looked like it was going to be a huge blowout after the first quarter. Florida was down 21-3. And good thing for Florida is that they came back and made it a close game. And overall, I was pretty impressed by the Gators' performance in that matchup. But in the end, of course, Alabama got the win. It would have been insane if Florida was able to get the win there. They were a field goal away from getting the win against Alabama. So, but still, very close matchup, and overall, not a bad game for Florida. And they're 2-1 as well, heading into this matchup with a 1-game losing streak. Game will be on Saturday, September 25th in Gainesville. So Florida is the home team in this matchup, and it will be a night game. 7 p.m. Eastern time is the kickoff time for this matchup. So obviously, Florida is a tough place to play. The Swamp is always, especially on game days, a tough place to play. And it's also a night game, so you also got to consider that into the equation here. Florida is currently favored by 20 according to the spread. So Florida is a heavy favorite in this matchup. Over under is 63, and the ESPN FPI is going Florida here 88.6%. So overall, Florida is heavily favored in this matchup. Not too surprising. Florida played pretty well last week, so that's a big reason to have them as a heavy favorite. But Tennessee, Tennessee, they did lose to Pittsburgh a couple of weeks ago, which is unfortunate, especially considering Pittsburgh, I believe, just lost in week 3 as well. But yeah, 20-point favorite for Florida is pretty heavy. But yeah, series history, Florida leads at 30-20. Win streak is Florida by 4. So Gators have had a pretty successful history in the past few years against Tennessee. Last time Tennessee won this matchup was in 2016. Here's your stat comparison for this matchup. Tennessee's got 42 points per game so far this season, 15 points allowed. Pass yards a game, 199. Rush yards a game, 223. Then for yards allowed, 210 passing and 54 rushing. So overall, rushing defense so far for the Vols has been pretty impressive. Only 54 rush yards allowed so far this season on average. As for Florida, 35 points per game, 21 points allowed, 217 pass yards on average, 336 rush yards. So Florida's been very impressive so far in the rushing game, 336 average rush yards a game so far this season. Then for yards allowed, 229 passing, 97 on the rushing end. So it'll be fun seeing that Tennessee defensive line going head-to-head against a pretty tough Florida rushing core right now. Obviously, the quarterback situation's been pretty interesting for Florida so far, having, of course, Emory Jones and Richardson as well. Anthony Richardson has been active so far this season, but overall, it's a tough situation because you got Richardson, who got, I believe, injured, and he's out for a couple of weeks here. I believe he was only available for emergency last week, so Richardson is able to play, but he's definitely not healthy right now. Emory Jones, on the flip side, he's been a bit of a disappointment. I believe he's thrown 5 picks so far this season, over 2 touchdowns. So, obviously, Emory Jones, this is his first starting season, almost full-time. So it's a big situation for him. He's still a pretty young quarterback. So I still have a lot of hope for him. I definitely think he's got a tremendous amount of upside and potential. So don't have a negative mindset about Emory Jones quite yet. It's been not the best start for him, but he definitely shows potential. So but it'll be very interesting to see how he plays here against Tennessee. This will be a big game for him and for this Florida offense in general. For Tennessee, though, of course, solid game played last week against Tennessee Tech. They lost to Pittsburgh a couple of weeks ago. Hendon Hooker shows potential as well. Of course, he was the Virginia Tech transfer after the 2020 season. And Hendon Hooker, he played pretty well last week. but now he's got a much tougher team to play against here in week 4 against a pretty talented Florida defense. But also, of course, you got that Michigan transfer, Joe Milton. Looks like he hasn't really been playing much as well. And it looks like Hendon Hooker is the main quarterback for this Tennessee team right now. But yeah, for Florida, they also have the home field advantage. Can't forget about that. And home field advantage is certainly back for this 2021 season. I mean, home field advantage really wasn't much of a thing if you think about it back in 2020 because obviously no fans in the stands or hardly any. So that is definitely a factor that you got to consider once again as we're back in this 2021 season with fans in the stands once again. But that being said, let's get to the prediction for this matchup, Tennessee and Florida. Got to go with Florida in this matchup. I mean, if it was in Tennessee, potentially I would consider it to be maybe Tennessee could pull an upset bid, but Florida is the better team clearly to me right now. I mean, the way that they played against Alabama and fought back after being down 21-3, I mean, that's tough. Coming back against a brutal Alabama team when you're down 21-3 after the first quarter. I mean, Florida fought back and they played pretty well throughout the rest of that game and made it winnable as well. I mean, it was within 2 points in the final score. So Florida, this is a talented team, and I think this team definitely shows big potential as well. And even though they might not win the SEC East this season, I mean, Georgia's a pretty tough team this year, I gotta say. I mean, if Florida beats Georgia, I mean, that would be insane. But I mean, I still think Florida's a very talented team, and I think this team is going to go and get a big win here in week 4, 38-24. Tennessee has really had no problem scoring points, so I do expect them to score a decent amount in this matchup. But I think Florida in the end is the better team, clearly to me. 38-24 is the final score. Probability, Florida 80%, so I'm pretty confident Gators get the win here. Over under 63, and I'm taking the under just barely in this matchup at 62 total points right now. So potentially could be a higher scoring one. We'll have to see what happens. But I've got Florida in the win 38-24 in this matchup. But let me know your thoughts and comments below on this matchup. I appreciate you guys all watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll see you later.